Hello everyone! It has been a while since I uploaded a video. The reason for that is that I was busy with a project, and in this video I want to showcase the project. The project is an Android app I made. It is a game and it is called Pi Tycoon. It is available in Google Play Store and a download link will be in the description of this video. Maybe you want to give it a try yourself. Any feedback on the game is very much appreciated. So, let's get into what this game is about. Pi Tycoon is an incremental idle game. The main currency of the game is insight, and the main goal of the game is to amass increasingly large amounts of insight. And also to use this insight to get better and better approximations of pi. I will explain the pi approximation feature later, because it requires much more insight than is available at the start of the game. For it, I will later skip to a save file where I have enough progress to present it. So, when we start a new game, then we have 0 insight and 0 insight per second. But there is a manual way of getting insight. We can generate insight by tapping the circle in the geometry section. Rapid tapping will reward us with 1 insight per tap, but the tapping also has a rhythm mechanic to it. When our taps are approximately 1 second apart from each other, then each tap rewards us with a multiple of what we would get per tap when spam tapping, depending on how close we are to a 1 second interval. There is also a narration voice that tells us how good our taps are. Good, great, or perfect. Let me demonstrate it.
Good, perfect, 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 great, great, perfect, perfect.
Now that we have 135 insight earned by tapping, we can start buying mathematicians. For that, let us navigate to the shop by tapping the shopping cart icon at the bottom navigation bar. Here, we can buy mathematicians. Bought mathematicians continually produce insight, even when the app is closed. So, once we buy mathematicians, we do no longer have to tap in order to gain insight. Of course, we could still tap occasionally to further increase insight production. The first mathematician we can buy is called Carter the Counter. He is a fictional mathematician of the Stone Age who figured out to track quantities by using tally marks on bones. Let us buy him now for 25 insight.
The count begins.
Now that we bought him, he will autonomously produce 1 insight per second. You might have also noticed that he has a mana bar and it is now slowly filling. He has a mana bar because he has an active ability, with an ability mana cost tied to it. Once he has enough mana to use his active ability, you can activate it. There are several mathematicians with active abilities, and they all use mana. The effects of the abilities vary from mathematician to mathematician. The next mathematician would be Nima of the River Tribes. But we do not have enough insight to buy her. Instead, we can just buy multiple Carter mathematicians for now. Let us buy 10 Carter. For that, let's help them a bit out on insight production by tapping the circle some more.
Good, perfect, 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 great, great, perfect, great, perfect, perfect, perfect.
Now we have 10 Carter. There are also technologies in the game. Technologies can be bought just like mathematicians, but unlike mathematicians, they do not produce any insight on their own. Instead, They serve as permanent upgrades once they are bought. In order to buy technologies, we need to switch to the correct shop page by tapping the Buy Technologies button towards the top. The first technology we can buy is the Pi Approximation Booster. It will double overall productivity for each known digit of pi we discovered. Since we have not yet discovered any digits of pi, this won't do anything for us for now. But let's buy it anyway since it only costs 1 inside. The next technology we can buy is Enhanced Tap Response. And it will make it such that our taps now additionally produce 1% of our insight per second. So, since we currently have an insight per second of 10, with this technology, taps will currently produce 0.1 insight more. Let's buy it and test it. Yes, in fact, now our taps produce 1.1 insight instead of 1 insight. Let's get back to the shop. The next technology we can buy is called Counting Bones, and it will double the productivity of all Katra mathematicians. Since all our insight per second comes from Katra mathematicians right now, we would expect this value to double upon buying this technology. And sure enough, after buying, the insight per second doubled from 10 to 20. Technologies become eligible to buy whenever we make certain progress in the game. So it is a good idea to check from time to time if new technologies are up in the shop. The next technology is a bit too expensive right now, so let's not think about buying it for now. Let us instead buy some more mathematicians. Let's buy Nima.
Numbers flow like water.
And some more Katra. Like so maybe. Nima is also a fictional character. But the upcoming mathematicians will be real historical mathematicians, ordered in the real timeline they lived in. There will be mathematicians like Pythagoras, Euclid, Archimedes, Euler, Newton, Gauss, just to name some. The last few mathematicians will then be futuristic mathematicians, which will be fictional again. You might have noticed that Nima doesn't have a mana bar. This is because she doesn't have an active ability. There are mathematicians with active abilities, which have mana. Then there are mathematicians with passive abilities that are active at all times once the mathematician is bought. And then there are mathematicians who do not have any ability. Next, I want to briefly go over the buff screen. We reach it by tapping the buff icon in the bottom navigation bar. On the screen, we can switch between displaying active buffs and passive buffs. Active buffs are buffs which expire after a certain duration, while passive buffs do not expire. At the moment, we have neither active nor passive buffs, but this will change once we get mathematicians with passive abilities and once we use the active abilities of mathematicians. Actually, there is a buff I can show you right now. For it to activate, we need to enter the support screen. We do this by tapping the page icon, at the top of the main screen, to the left of the cogwheel icon. On this support screen, we can claim our supporter buff by tapping this button. It is a buff that increases overall productivity by 50% for 24 hours. Now we activated it. When we now navigate back to the main screen, we can see it now in the active buffs section. Tapping on it displays the name, description and the remaining time of the buff. You might also notice that Kator is listed in the ability quick menu section. This is because Kator has an active ability. It is a quick menu for activating active abilities of owned mathematicians. The bar below Kator indicates how much mana he currently has. Once he has enough mana to activate his ability, the button called Kator becomes clickable. The currently active supporter buff is now also listed under active buffs on the buff screen. There is also a stats screen that can be reached by tapping the stats icon at the bottom navigation bar. The stats screen displays various game stats, and at the bottom of the screen, for each owned mathematician, there is detailed information about the individual current stats. There are also achievements in the game, and for some of those achievements, they are also Play Games achievements that will be additionally unlocked for your Play Games profile. We can view achievements by tapping the View Achievements button at the top right of the stats screen. On this screen, we see all unlocked achievements with the timestamps of when they were unlocked. With the View Play Games Achievements button at the bottom, we can also view the Play Games achievements. You might have also noticed the news messages at the top of the screen. These messages are math jokes or funny lines reflecting the current progress in the game. They do not serve any purpose other than being funny. I thought they would just be a neat little extra. Before I skip to a later game state, let us get back to the main screen. I want to mention two more icons there. The question mark icon at the top right of the screen will open an how-to dialog. It explains some basic stuff about the game. The cogwheel icon to the left of the question mark icon opens the settings screen. Here we can change the visual appearance of the game by setting a mode, like light or dark mode, and a color palette. Also, we can change some audio options and can even change the background music that is playing. Both the color palette and the background music are set to random as standard, which means that each app stud will pick a random color palette and background music. If you would rather like to stick with a specific one, then just change the option from random to that specific one. Okay, that was everything I wanted to talk about prior to skipping to a later save state in order to show some later mechanics of the game. I now skip to a game state where I already have enough insight to show some later game features. Especially, I want to explain the core mechanic of the game, approximating pi. Our way of approximating pi is inspired by how Archimedes approximated pi. He defined pi as the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. He then reasoned that this ratio is independent of the diameter of the circle. So pi is always the same, no matter how big the circle is. He then imagined the circle to have a diameter of 1. He did that, so the circumference of this circle is pi. So now all he needed to do is figuring out the circumference of this circle. While he couldn't do that directly, he could inscribe polygons into the circle and figure out their perimeters and reasoned that the circumference of the circle must be at least as big as this perimeter. So, inscribed polygons, like we see it in the geometry section in blue, gave him lower bounds for pi. He got upper bounds for pi in a similar way. He circumscribed polygons around the circle and reasoned that their perimeter is at least as big as the circumference of the circle. By using regular polygons with more and more sides, he could shrink the margin between lower bounds and upper bounds more and more, and for each leading digit the lower and upper bounds agreed on, he won an actual digit of pi. Archimedes doubled the sides of the polygons in each step of his approximation process. For gameplay reasons, we will add sides one by one. Other than that, we will use the same reasoning for discovering digits of pi. So, when we have a look at the geometry section, that is the reason there is not only a circle but also an inscribed and a circumscribed triangle. The inscribed triangle is the blue triangle and the circumscribed triangle is the orange triangle. Their perimeters and therefore the bounds they set for pi are displayed numerically in the pi approximation section. Since they do not agree in any leading digits, the upper bound starts with 5, the lower bound starts with 2. We do not know any digits of pi for certain right now. In order to increase the lower bound, we need to buy polygon sides for the inscribed triangle, and in order to lower the upper bound, we need to buy sides for the circumscribed triangle. Let us do that right now. After buying some sides for the inscribed polygon, we have now a lower bound with a leading digit of 3. Let us now buy some sides for the circumscribed polygon, so the upper bound might also get a leading digit of 3. Now the bounds agree on the first digit. So we know for certain that the first digit of pi is 3. And we now know one digit of pi for certain. I'll now buy even more sides for both polygons until we know the first 3 digits of pi for certain. Now we know the first 3 digits of pi, the famous 3.14. This dialog informs us that by doing so we now have unlocked the special screen. Before we enter the special screen, I want to mention 3 more things. In fact, I want to mention 3 more icons. Currently, we have several octillion, well, not several octillion, but we have 1.2 octillion inside. This is a large number, and so it is usually abbreviated by the number suffix OC and written in scientific notation with exponent. If you ever feel curious how the number suffix is pronounced, you can just tap the voiceover icon in the progress section and a narration voice will speak it. Like so.
Octillion. Octillion. Octillion.
And if you ever feel curious about the exact value of insight you currently have and produce per second, you can open a dialog that shows the exact values by tapping the hashtag icon in the progress section. Lastly, I want to show you one more icon before switching to the special screen. It is the world icon in the approximation section. Upon tapping it, a dialog appears which tells you which object's circumference you could calculate with the current bounds of pi with a margin of less than 1 millimeter between the lower bound and the upper bound, given you know the diameter of the object. The object examples move from small objects through everyday sizes, planets, stars, and eventually much larger structures in the universe. Let us now enter the special screen. We can enter the special screen by tapping the special icon at the right end of the bottom navigation bar. On the special screen, we can ascend and later we can also fund research to solve mathematical problems in the research university. For now, let us ascend. When we ascend, all our progress in this ascension will be lost. But we will be rewarded with ascension points, depending on how much sites we have bought in this run and how much ascension points we already have. Let us ascend now. We are now at the Ascension screen. Here we can buy permanent upgrades that will affect future runs. The first such upgrade we need to buy is the Hadamard gate extractor. It will reduce the cost increase factor when buying polygon sites. This upgrade has 25 levels and we just bought the first level. Buying further levels cost more ascension points. So let us close it right now. We are now free to use the remaining points on other ascension upgrades in the ascension skill tree. Like so, for example. There is one important tip I want to give you. The Hadamard gate extractor is very vital to the progress of the game, so never sleep on upgrading it as soon as possible. Do not worry though, you can't really permanently mess up your game by skilling wrong, since you can always sell purchased Ascension upgrades for a full refund. Worst thing that could happen is that you notice being somewhat stuck in a run because you didn't upgrade the Hadamard gate extractor. But in that case, just ascend, maybe sell other stuff, buy this upgrade and start a new run. This is pretty much everything I wanted to show. There is also this research university I mentioned earlier and many more Ascension upgrades. but I'll end it right there and leave that for anyone interested to discover for themselves. As I said at the beginning, if anyone is interested, please give this game a try. Any feedback is very much appreciated. Thank you for watching to the end.